Hello, family. This is Brother Jamal again, and this is the third part of the uh, discussion about courage, respect, and likability, and then dealing with those who are haters or those who might hate you in the context of that um, of our African struggle. And so we left off with a quote from John Henry Clark that talks about to control the people, you must first control the way they think about themselves and how they regard their history and their culture. And when you have succeeded in that, you don't have to worry about if you become ashamed of your culture and ashamed of your history, then he has no need for prison walls or chains because you're going to already be controlled. And that's why I said in the beginning of this channel, we want to deal with self-esteem. We wanted to deal with how we think about ourselves and how we see Africa. And there's a lot of us still today that just doesn't want that we don't want to connect ourselves with the continent of Africa. We don't want to connect ourselves with that because we feel maybe that we've been born somewhere else, and then some people feel like it's because the negativity that's associated with it. So there seems to be a conscious effort for historians and everyone to try to restore or try to correct those bad stereotypes, and we're trying to get ourselves up out of that because the greatness that was once demonstrated out of the continent of Africa that's very little talked about. We need to revisit those things and see exactly what contributions our people made to civilization. Otherwise, we're just going off of what somebody else tells us. So a lot of times you have to do your own research and your own learning for yourself because not everybody's going to uh, love you, and they're not going to always care about your best interest, and so they're not going to see these things as important, but it's very important for us. So anyway, going back to the said we're going to talk a little bit about sociology and psychology when it comes to people of African descent interacting with each other. Um, Let me see if there's something here that I want to make sure that I do. Now, we want to talk about the psychosocial development in the African. Psycho just means pertaining to psychology, pertaining to the way the mind thinks, and social is just how we deal with it in society, how we socialize with our mental processes, and then interpersonal relations, just interacting with other people. So the psychosocial and interpersonal relations and interacting with others a lot of times was shaped in a bad environment when we were on the plantation. So some of those maladaptive behaviors that that would be considered dysfunctional today, that would be considered subservient attitudes, we get them through religion, we get them through different mechanisms. I'll tell you what, in sociology, they have 5 institutions, and one is called education, the institution of education, the institution of economics, the institution of religion, and the institution of government, which is your judicial system, and you've got the family. Those are all institutions, and in all of those 5 institutions, the carryover of negative images have been brought to people of African descent, and it's also brought to people of European descent. The young ones learn the wrong information as well as the young Africans. So in these different institutions is where you come in contact with a lot of the things that make us hate ourselves. One comedian said he never learned hate until he left his family and went to school. When he went to school, he learned how to hate. And that was a very interesting statement, and I could understand what he was saying. But anyway, the psychosocial and the interpersonal relations is what we want to look at. So since we know that the plantation is not the right way to be, then what way should we be? We should be in a way that, like I said, enhances our people, enhances our cause. Now, I want to make sure I don't lose this reader here. I have this reader set for a scripture I wanted to read. But in the family, we are insulated by our family, the family that teaches us what to do and what not to do, how to act, how not to act. And in a situation where you're an oppressed group of people, You have certain things that you should not do, or certain things that you are allowed to do that may not be the same thing taught to the dominant race of that same society, because the dominant race gets a pass most of the time that you may not. So you may not be able to argue with a police officer like someone in the dominant race. If you're in a minority race, a race that's, less in numbers than the majority race. So there's certain do's and don'ts that you're taught. And most people have been trying to thrive to make that an equal across the board where people are treated right. So on the plantation, since we were taught to be that way, in the modern day world, we can identify some of these people within the African context that demonstrate why we don't get along, or why we seem to have different goals and see things differently than we should. And so there's a thing called transactional analysis, and that just means that the way we see things and the way we understand how we're supposed to be in relative to our society that we live in. So if it's an oppressive society, there's certain personalities that come out of this that's sort of like what we were talking about on the plantation. But let me bring up one. One is called an external locus of control, internal locus of responsibility, and that's just a person that feels responsible for whatever happens in their life. They take full responsibility for it, and though they feel like the system is basically okay the way it is they're neither committed to it or not committed to it, but they feel like it's okay the way it is, and the way they define who you are, define what you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to be, is basically what they go by. And this is a person like you and me, the African black African that thinks this way. So when he fails or she fails, they think it's totally their own inability to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, to succeed like everyone else. They feel like the system is basically nothing to go against, because they value those values better than they own their own African values. So if it's a white dominated system, they'll say, well, white people things are better than ours anyway, so I'm gonna thrive to be this way. But when they fail, they take full responsibility, or they look at it as not a problem with the system, but a problem with themselves. So that's one group. Then there's another one that sees the system as a problem. That's called the external locus of control. And then they feel like the system is responsible for the outcomes of it, the external locus of responsibility. They feel that this is the African too. I'm talking about the African in these different contexts. There's three of them I want to talk about. So this is the second one. This one is the one that has basically given up. They know the system is not right. They know the system is not fair. They also know that it's not really their responsibility, but they're not going to say anything about it. They're going to go along as much as they can to survive. They're not going to rock the boat. They're not going to speak up. They're not going to say anything. They're just going to placate to the fullest. They're going to blend in with it. And this is where the Uncle Tom comes in. He's the one that knows, he's aware, but he turns just for the sake of survival. He does not care. He does not want to engage. He does not want to try to change things. He wants to stay like it is because he can't handle the retaliation and the reprisals he gets for making that stand. He just wants to be left alone or liked the way he is, and I'll be anything. Just let me live. Okay. Then you have another group that's called the internal locus of control, external locus of responsibility. They also see that the system is wrong and it's not fair for everybody across the board. So their response is to speak out, to say something about it, to try to change legislation, to try to get justice. And so they have a tendency to become activists. They speak out, they stand up. And so many times these people clash with the ones that I mentioned in the previous group, because one of them saying don't rock the boat, one of them saying I'm going to rock it. So you got two different kinds of Africans going against each other. The one doesn't want to say anything about it, the other one does. Now, the first one I mentioned that was on the fence, he's kind of marginalized. He's looking at that it's up to him whether he's going to succeed or not, and he's not going to have he doesn't have any system blame. The problem with him is a lot of it that is based on the system. He wants to think that it's just because of his own doing. And so he's going to also be one that says, you just lazy. He said, you just don't want to work. You want to complain. You want to gripe. And all you need to do is get in there and do what you roll your sleeves up and do the work, and you'll get through just like everybody else did. But that's not totally the case. So you got these kind of Africans conflicting with each other, especially in the diaspora. And one of them says that one's a sellout, one of them said that one's a troublemaker and an agitator. And you got all these dynamics going back and forth. And I just wanted to share that with you. I know that the ECIR thing may throw you, but I'm trying to break it down. If you want me to come back and visit this at a different time with more detail, I can. But I don't have that time. My time is running out. So, so there's ways of dealing with these kind of things, and you just have to deal with it in the best way possible. But the one that's more adjusted and that's psychologically sound is the one that poses the changes, and they go out and say this is not right, and they take a lot of attack for doing it. But it takes a lot of courage, what I was talking about, a lot of courage, and you're not really thriving to be liked. You're really thriving to be changed. And sometimes you could lose your life if it's too intense. It gets a little rough, but that's the price. The price of freedom, as Malcolm X said, is death. Sometimes we have to bleed. You see this flag back here? This flag represents the Garvey flag, or what you call the African flag in the USA. And the green represents the abundance of mineral wealth in the land of Africa. This is black as the people, and this red is the blood. And that's what that flag basically means. And so it's not recognized by the United Nations. It's just a flag that the people rally under for their rights and their struggle. And so I just wanted to share that with you. But sometimes you have to bleed. The other thing I want to say is there's a let me look at something real quick here. Now, there's different ways to say that the system doesn't work for you. You think, okay, let me do this. I'm gonna give an example of so people say, oh, you're just talking about discrimination. It doesn't exist. Let me give you some examples of discrimination here. In economics, you have created ghettos and you have marginalized income, where you're working at low wages and you possibly could be making more and you're struggling barely above poverty level. And so some of those economics should change, but then people say in the system that you need more education for, but you can spend a lot of money for education and still not make any real money once you get out and get that degree. So the disparity that you get in economics is one form, especially if one group is seeming to get better pay and better jobs than the other. Religion, you got the images and negative images coming out about Christ and things that are saying that everything divine is white, everything that's demonic is black. So you have something like that we're trying to overcome. And then education, nothing about your history, nothing about the truth of your people in the education systems, but you want black history in there. You call it black history. The dominant race in the diaspora don't have to put white history on theirs. It's already white. So I'm saying these are things that people have been trying to balance out, and these are the things that people have been struggling with. And I kind of went over it faster than I wanted to go because I wanted to explain more, but my time is about up. So I'm trying to think if I should do part 4 with this. And I'm going to decide that, but right now we have to conclude because our time is up. So, man, know thyself. Self-knowledge is the key. Self-love and respect for your God and your people. And this is Brother Jamala. Till next time, Hotep.